Welcome to the Multidose Podcast, your guide to authenticity, hosted by Multazim Zia. Brought to you by the Multipath. This podcast is more than just insights, it's your dose of authenticity. Join us as experts, celebrities, influencers, and real people share their authentic knowledge like never before. From every episode, you can expect to learn something new and maybe explore a new perspective on your own life. To support our podcast, consider donating to our Patreon and share the love on social media. Every like, follow, comment, share, and penny counts. Find us on all streaming platforms and connect with us on our social media at The Multipath and at Multazim Zia. Your authenticity is just one dose away.
So quickly introduce yourself and we'll get straight to chat because there's a lot that we need to speak about.
So I'm Denis Smith, and I'm a legal entrepreneur. I run a business called Obelisk Support. We provide legal services primarily to in-house corporate teams or businesses without a corporate team, but they need legal support. And I also run a charity called Spark 21, and the charity, I'm a trustee of it, and we power the campaign called Next 100 Years, which followed on the first 100 years campaign, and that built on the centenary celebrations of women being allowed to be lawyers in England and Wales, and actually anywhere in the world where English law applied and prevented them from being lawyers.
Nice. Now, everyone, after hearing that introduction, you'll know there will be a lot to unpack there, but I'm not going to unpack anything of that introduction just yet. There's something I want to speak about first. I believe, and I've read, and we've spoken about this, that you had a history in journalism as well, haven't you?
Yeah, so I'm a bit of a career switcher. I always think I was ahead of my generation for sure. So I belong probably to a different generation. So I started my first job was as a reporter in a local newspaper. I came out of high school straight into journalism, and I loved that. It was a 12-year stretch, so it was a proper career, I guess. And I interrupted it by going to study for my undergraduate degree at the London School of Economics. I was a mature student when I joined, so I started my degree at 22, I think. I'm not really sure. I just know I was a bit older than everybody else. And so I did my undergrad in 2 years, and then I stayed on for a master's degree. Nothing to do with law. I returned to journalism, so I worked for the Economist Group as a writer. And then, well, maybe we'll get to talk about why I switched. But anyway, my first love was writing and journalism.
Nice. Now, that does nicely lead me on to my question, which is, do you feel like in your position, because you've had a history in the journalistic world or journalism world, however you say that, and the legal world and the entrepreneur world, how has your journalism skills helped you between all of those different industries that you've passed through?
Well, to be honest, when I switched from journalism to law, I basically said that, we're dealing with the same, if you like, element, which is words. There's a kind of, there was a continuity, I think, between the journalism and legal careers, because it was a lot, obviously, before I gave voice to people and I put it in writing and I communicated on their behalf and I kind of analyzed stories. When you're a lawyer, you're looking at words and you're trying to interpret what they mean and how they impact the people that instruct you. And so I didn't really feel there was a massive leap, because I just thought, well, actually, I'm still dealing with words in different ways, but that was they were about the same kind of element. My work was around wordsmithing, if you like. What really struck me when I came into the legal profession, because obviously as a journalist, you have to be out with people a lot and collect stories and listen to a lot of stories and make sense of them. And you need to just love people and what they're going through and try to put it into a story. When I came to law, I realized actually there was a difference between my kind of love for people and kind of being out and helping and everything, and then actually the subject, because I became a city lawyer. The subject was very dry, so there was just transactional documents and things we were doing as opposed to people that we were helping or writing about. And I think that kind of the split, if you like, in my own kind of how I am, it was quite difficult to manage because I just love people, but then actually the object of my work wasn't about people, it was about derivatives or something very abstract. And although that was intellectually interesting and stimulating, actually for me, I always wanted it too much to, I really liked the fact that journalism was about people and an outlet for people. And but what I loved in the law, which I think I really still I love a lot, is actually a lot of the individual lawyers are incredible humanists. So you get a lot of wonderful people. Sometimes they have to go into this kind of mindset of being a lawyer, and you have to fight and win and whatever, but actually underneath all of that, I love the people in law. Even when you meet them first time, they might come across as really scary and kind of detached and cold and frightening. In fact, behind that sits a really well-informed, interesting, compassionate human. And so in a way, when you take the curtains out the way, you do find the same kind of world of people that I had left before, behind in journalism. But I thought it wasn't there with law, but then I discovered it was, and it definitely made it more interesting for me.
Yes, I have to agree. I did actually put a post about this recently. I'm similar to you in the sense that I usually I attempt every industry I possibly can. I'm in every industry I possibly can be at this point. And I think by far the most supportive, the most welcoming, the most warm community I've been involved in is the legal one. And it's the shortest one I've actually been involved in. So in terms of getting from the law world, have you been in or have you tried any other niches of the legal world? So family law, criminal law, where you can be more directly, I guess, impactful, like you would be as a journalist, I guess.
Yeah. Well, so I qualified in employment law, and that's
Yeah.
not a surprise, right? Because that is actually, as I call it, it's divorce for work, whereas family law is about
Yeah.
divorce. So I ended up in employment law because it was much more about really helping people and being close to where people spend a lot of time, right? So that was something that I really enjoyed. I stayed on and volunteered via the free representation unit. So I took some cases pro bono to help individuals against their employers. I did city type work in employment, which involves redundancy rounds and things like that. So I've seen the whole range of types of employment law, I guess, including litigation and all these settlement agreements, all these things that you do. And I really enjoyed it, and I love the advocacy because a lot of litigation doesn't really always go to court, and it was really nice to be able to go all the way and really represent people. I thought it was a great way to kind of have that experience very early in my career. But when I was deciding what to do, because I qualified later, because I came into the legal profession later, having done my, long way in, I took the view that I wanted something different, and I could continue down the path of employment law, niching and becoming, going maybe to a specialist law firm, or maybe actually disrupt and create a new chapter in my life, which is what I ended up deciding to do. But I think it's basically because I was older and I felt I had built. Going back to your first question, I mean, I never took the view that any stage of my career was not a building block towards whatever else I was going next. So journalism was going to always help my legal career, and my legal career was going to be part of whatever was the next stage, whenever that was going to come. And so when I decided to try entrepreneurship, it never crossed my mind, that I will ever become a founder, run a business, and employ people. But once I took that decision, I thought, well, I need to give it my best shot and see what I'm any good, because you can always have the qualification in the back pocket, and you can always write if you can write and you're trained to do it. So I felt confident, I think, because of the various layers I laid before, to just say, well, what can happen is that it all goes belly up, and well, I'll go to one of the other things that I did before. I'm not going to be unemployable because that you have a level of quality, training, and ability that if you put your mind to it, you'll be okay.
Yeah.
So I decided to try my hand at being an entrepreneur, and that's what I did basically. So also, I think part of it was that I looked around and I thought, well, if partnership is the desired outcome, because why would you stay anywhere in any firm if you're not advancing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think at the time when I qualified in 2007, you looked around and you were kind of an immigrant woman in a big city firm. I mean, to be honest, no one around me was with that background that was going anywhere. So for me, the calculation was, well, if it will take me about 10, 12 years to get to the partnership, not the top, but to the first tier, right? Just get your foot through, salaried partner, whatever they would offer. Then how else could I spend my 10 years? I mean, could I accelerate myself somewhere else? And I thought entrepreneurship could be a way for me to get somewhere else faster without having to queue for my turn. And maybe my turn was never going to come. And my assessment was that I didn't think my turn would come, and I didn't depend on that turn to come. I could just make my own turn.
Yeah, which is probably the correct thing you've done, because your business is quite successful. You've become quite successful. So let's talk a little bit more about your business. And I might mispronounce this. Is it Obelisk? Obelisk?
Obelisk, yeah. Obelisk.
So tell me what got you to ideate and then execute Obelisk Support. So what is it? Why did you think of this career of everything you could potentially do? So from journalism to law, you decided to pick this business format and niche. Tell me a little bit more.
So I first started a very different business because I didn't really have any experience of running a business. So I didn't really know what it involves. And my first business was a combination of journalism and law. And I created a consulting business in political risk and compliance, which was an area that obviously I knew because of journalism. I traveled to a lot of emerging markets. Lehman Brothers collapsed in 2008, and my specialism was emerging markets, and they became a massive driver of global growth because that was the only type of market that was growing. And I happened to have expertise in those countries and be able to add value. And obviously I understood a lot of the complexity of the local economy and political landscape and things. So I started my business with this idea of creating a consulting firm built around local experts in different jurisdictions where we were working as political risk analysts and economists. And that business, I learned a lot about the kind of business I didn't want to build by running it, because I suddenly realized that being an expert in your business means you trap yourself into the expertise. So you end up people say, well, I want Dana's view, or I want Dana's forecast, or I want Dana's writing. And the point is Dana's one. Maybe now with AI, Dana can be multiple Dana. But the point is, in 2008, it was me. And if the dependency on me was basically smothering the growth of the business, it was impossible to grow if I didn't multiply. And it was also very difficult to quality control people that were very different from me. So I ended up having about 50, 60 people in different countries submitting their knowledge. And then we obviously had very large, my market has always been understanding the city and the bigger corporates and how they think internationally in terms of investment. So that was the market we targeted, large banks and things. And so it was very interesting, but I realized the dangers of being an expert entrepreneur and how you are a problem in your own business. You can't scale it because you are basically in the way. Also, that consultancy is very difficult to scale as a business because you depend very much on project revenue, and then there's no kind of, you have to always win a bigger ticket, but it doesn't really, it's quite difficult if you then are the main expert. So anyway, so basically I learned by running my first business what kind of business I didn't want to run and what kind of business I wanted to try to build. And obviously you learn all the kind of basics of running a business around, employees and, managing admin and, filings and all this stuff that you have to do, because you have to get your hands dirty, how to manage cash flow and money and whatever, how to win clients, all the basics. But it was kind of low risk because basically it was going to grow if I was willing to kind of put more time and effort in, but it was never going to be a big business. And I went, when I was running that business, on a trade mission to India, and that's when I got the kind of new idea came into my head, because obviously India is, I think, the largest market for outsourcing in the world. And legal outsourcing was starting to take shape. Legal process outsourcing, mainly kind of volume-based work and disclosure and all that kind of stuff that go for a million documents and whatever. And India was becoming a very big market, but there was this kind of big gap between what type of work they were doing and what the final product that actually the client over here needed in order to do whatever they needed to do. And I wanted to kind of be the bridge, if you like. So I came up with this idea of outsourcing to people's homes and use women that were trained in the city who couldn't work full time in an office because they had family or children or parents or whatever they were looking after, but they wanted flexible work, and there wasn't any. In 2010 when I launched, there was just no opportunity to work from home or whatever. And so I decided that I will create an outsourcing model that leverages this talent in the home, that was highly trained. They were understood what the client needed, but they needed a different type of working from home. And in my head, I thought, well, if people and companies are prepared to send the work to India and offshore and all of that, and actually we have something that is missing in the middle, maybe these people are the answer. And I realized very early on that none of the output will depend on me, because it all depended on how many lawyers I could bring on the platform. And if I had a very good setup, then actually I was just managing the business rather than being the expert in the business. Which is what I learned I didn't want to be. And I came back and I decided that I was going to start this new business and figure out what I'm going to do with the old business. So it was all going on, and I was also pregnant as well. So I had everything all at the same time. But in the end, it all landed in the right way. So I was able to kind of process out the projects and kind of use some of the other businesses stuff to kind of use to start the new business. And I incorporated, we did some research and whatever. So in the end, my research skills again, and the kind of the ability to interpret trends and risks were very helpful to building the business and think about where the gaps could be or where the opportunities are. Because ultimately, if you've got a lot of talent that is being wasted, then actually it's an economic imperative. It's not just about me being an entrepreneur or about social impact. It's about leveraging all talent, because the economy needs to absorb more of that capacity that's not being used at a better price point. So anyway, so for me, it just struck me during this trip. I always get great ideas in India because I love the energy. I love the the kind of people roll up their sleeves, because it's a kind of survivor mechanism. It's not a kind of a choice. They come to solving problems from a different angle, but it's really, it opens your eyes to a lot of ideas. And I came back and I thought, that's it, we're gonna do this. This is a scalable idea. The other one was not scaling. And I banned myself from doing any legal work. So my rule on myself was, if I want this to be a big business, I'm not the lawyer in the business. I am the CEO. And I'll have to have lawyers that can do the work. And that was a rule that I've never changed from day one.
And you still have that same philosophy?
Yeah.
It's an idea. It was a great idea. And of course, it's done super successfully, so people can research how successful it's become. How did you get from the idea phase into the execution phase? So I'm not asking you to give away secrets, more so how, if anybody's watching this that wants to build a business that's scalable, what steps should they be taking?
Well, I mean, the first step, I came back and I thought, well, I need to register because I'm very excited about setting this up and just register a company and kind of get the basics of what a business structure requires, right? I put together a very basic business plan around, okay, so if I think this is the client base, in-house lawyers in large corporates, what kind of lawyers I need, that kind of thing. Very basic, completely off in terms of, the predictions in terms of financials were completely made up because you have no idea. And the other thing I did was to try and test my sentiment against what the market was thinking. And that actually came back a complete disaster because basically the market, I asked, I had a kind of couple of interns almost, doing a research exercise, calling the FTSE 100 General Council and asking whether they outsource, what their concerns are, would they consider outsourcing to somebody home, whatever. And basically the findings were no way. We will never outsource to somebody at home. We wouldn't work with somebody who doesn't work full time. And basically it was quite dejecting, actually. I was like, but maybe because I was pregnant, I was on a high. So I was reading this thinking, this is not looking good, but I will prove them wrong because I have this idea and I know it's going to work. And you do have this kind of, as an entrepreneur, once you have an idea, you can become quite obsessive,
Yes, I agree.
But also you have to be open enough to be refining. So when the findings came back and they expressed certain concerns, I was thinking, okay, so how do I ring fence these problems? Because I can't reject that they worried about it. They told me these are the things that they worried about. So if they're really worried about confidentiality, I remember we were exploring how do we collect any legal documents and kind of contract with a shredding company that goes around these villages to collect all the secret papers to shred them so people don't feel in any way that their documents are floating about, whatever, like also like the ideas are quite wild at times around how can we address this problem. In the end, I mean, also when you're a new kid on the block, people think, well, why you and how can I trust you because you don't have any brand, I mean, they might know you as an individual, but they don't really know if you can really do what you say.
Yes, exactly.
And kind of persuading them to giving you a shot and kind of just saying, well, lower the risk and say, well, this is not high risk, actually, just give me a shot. And if I do well, you give me a bigger shot. So the first year, you're just testing some of the kind of fixations you have that you think must work. And then, to be honest, in the first year, everything came back basically saying, forget it. It's not going to work. Or the way you think it's working is not going to work. So you have to be flexible enough to go back to the drawing board and say, well, what does this mean for my plan? And I mean, even my plan, when I realized I was pregnant, I mean, my plan when I started the business obviously was to have a family, but I didn't know the timing is the timing. So in the end, I ended up being out of the business for a few months because I had complications from the birth. And there's nothing that I could tell or foresee about it. I just had to roll with it and be flexible. And I think I learned, I mean, every single meeting where I had a really, in the moment, really unpleasant pushback was probably, and people always say that, even in sports or whatever, it's those awful moments of low and unpleasantness that teach you the most. And it's true. And they're really uncomfortable because you just hate what you're hearing. You're like, oh yeah, I remember I had this meeting with a big bank and we had recruited about 120 women primarily by this point. And they were all part-time, so all together, I saw this general counsel and he said, okay, so you got 120 part-timers, that makes up about 15 full-time equivalents. I mean, I can't do anything with them in my bank because I'm a big bank and I need like armies of people. And I thought, well, just give me something. You kind of want to win something, but he had a point. So I just thought, well, if that's what he thinks and that's his assessment, his perception, I can't just say it's not valid. That's a client. It's the client's voice is saying it's not big enough. It's not. It's not enough for what I need. And I
Mm.
thought, well, tell me more about what you need. And then I went off and I just went on a literally blitz of onboarding lots of people.
Yeah.
And then before we knew it, within a year, I think we had 500. We got to the
Wow.
point where we had no idea who we had anymore, you know. So if we had, I had by this point a sales person, and whenever he was trying to pair clients to particular lawyers or whatever, he was like, I mean, who's here? Who can do this? I can't find anyone, because it was all on spreadsheets and whatever,
Yeah.
whatever. And then I realized I had to automate and create a proper platform where you
Yeah.
could deep search, you can match, you can, you know, have everybody's skills kind of properly, you know, set up, so you can filter and really, and in a smart way, get to the answer really quickly. And that's what we did. You know, we built our own platform which matches basically whatever the job description is to the lawyers that we have, literally by pressing a button. You know.
Yep.
And but it takes time, and also if you don't really have, I mean, one of the decisions you have to take early on, and it depends on what idea you have, is whether you need investment or not,
Yep.
because that is a decision in itself. So for me, I tried to raise, but people agreed that it was very scalable.
Mm.
But those days, you could still get away by with things like, but you're pregnant and you might not, you know, come back after having a child and things. I think the world of investments changed a little bit, thankfully. But so I had a lot of kind of meetings that didn't go anywhere, but it was primarily linked to what I looked like,
Yeah.
rather than the business idea itself. So I had no choice but to try and find client and persuade them and really grow through selling,
Mm.
which means that you learn a lot about your market fit for the product. Because
Yeah.
if clients say it's not right for me, or I need this or whatever, you test some things, they don't go maybe as you want, or something different comes back, you're just saying, well, is there an opportunity? Is there an idea?
Mm.
But as you grow, by year 3 or so, it's very tempting then to go and into scattergun, and every idea is a runner idea, and then you
Yeah.
basically have to decide what is the main thing and stick to the
Yeah.
main thing. And that's, I enjoy that stage of entrepreneurship, because it really challenges your maturity as an entrepreneur. But if you want to be the creative entrepreneur, normally founders get bored at this point, because it kind of gets,
Yeah.
you know, process and whatever. But I think for me, that's the stretch. Can you scale the business in a sustainable way by
Yeah.
following the consistency and the discipline that's required to scale?
Mm. Yeah.
Or do you just want to launch something and then somebody else does that for you? You know, the
Yeah.
different skills.
Well, to be honest, I completely and utterly get the point of where you get a bit of a scattergun approach. That's what I'm doing at the moment, a scattergun approach. So I absolutely relate to that. Now, you mentioned something very briefly, and I do want to come into this because it sounds like it's a huge ethos and a huge part of your life, and it doesn't sound like it's evidenced, it's tangible. You have a project of the first 100 years, is that's what it's called? Um, well, tell me about the project. Tell me why it was ideated, and tell me again why it was implemented. Because it sounds like you've had your fair share of pushbacks, well, discriminatory pushbacks. So presumably that's something to do with it.
Yes and no, to be honest. I mean, I think I don't really. I think I said it to other people. I kind of have this maybe skill, but also a desire to minimize obstacles and kind of not, you know, when I
Yeah.
see something, I don't make it into an elephant if I can avoid it.
Mm.
So you operate within the context that you find, and then you try to
Mm.
bring the best out of it if you
Yeah.
can. So for me, I set up the first 100 years because I discovered through a photograph that women, by law, were not allowed to become lawyers. So every time somebody applied, basically they would be told, sorry, you're not a person in the law, so therefore you can't be, because women were not persons
Yeah.
by law. And in 1919 the law was changed to remove this disqualification because of your sex, which was to
Mm.
be a woman. And I realized in 2014 that basically in 2019 it would be 100 years of this very important moment that basically made it possible for any woman, including me, to to have been in this profession. Because I realized that actually, once you think, wow, it's only 100 years, you think 100 years, is it long? Is it short? You know? And then you think, well, if we don't have so many women partners and if we don't have so many women leaders, actually, that short history is an answer. Why? You can't say, I want 100% women in all the firms. But when you look at the history, that law has been going on for thousands of years, right? In the UK, maybe like 13th century or something. And for all those centuries, there were no women. And suddenly, in the 20th century, there are some women coming through. I think that's significant. And people should know it's new. It's not because everybody wants to keep you out. It's because you were not there to be in, you know?
Yep.
And so I thought this is a really important opportunity to talk about what we mean by what we complain about around women's role and how it came about, and actually explain some of the past barriers that we don't have anymore, and also build on that, you know, really understand that history and the heritage that women have for themselves and use it to flourish in the future, because otherwise you just keep in the present all the time. And I don't think that, obviously, it didn't really work because we still have these problems. So for me, it was about creating a more positive story around women, for women as well, to identify with, because often when I was in a law firm or whatever, often people say, oh, that woman partner, oh, she's awful, whatever. So there was very little positive messaging around the women leaders in the profession, because they were like, oh, but you know, she took 1 week maternity leave and she came, or she gave birth and she was back in the office next day. So there were a lot of negative role models. And I thought, well, actually, maybe this is an opportunity to create positive role models to show what women have achieved, and to really change and celebrate and recognize we are here. We can't say we're not, you know. And for me, the best way is also because it was 100 years. It was such a beautiful kind of way to tell the story, because I was a journalist, right? So, so I launched it with that in mind, that I had 5 years to collect a lot of the stories, identify all the firsts, because I realized a lot of the, you know, firsts were still alive. Women that were the first woman on the Supreme Court, first woman Court of Appeal. So many of them were pioneers, and they were not 100 years ago, because obviously they weren't around.
Of course.
Suddenly I thought, wow, there's an opportunity to really record this history and pass it on. And that's what we did. So basically we started filming biographies of all the first women, and we made 77 films. I mean, it's the largest archive dedicated to the history of women in law, probably in the world. And we had an exhibition that basically traveled around the country from one university to another. I think it was viewed by about 3.5 million people, telling the story of women in law, about how we started and why this 1919 year was so important. We published the books. We did award ceremonies, probably the first awards dedicated to women. We started 10 years ago. Just a lot of, I mean, we commissioned a piece of music dedicated to women, which I think was never done before. And then in the end, we also commissioned and donated to the Supreme Court the first artwork to depict women lawyers, which is now, it's visible in courtroom number 2. Anybody can go in and see it. So we kind of left a really visible mark and a real physical archive. So if you don't know what women have done, you can now find out who they were, what they did. But also when you move around these buildings, you can see more of them. And, you know, for me, it was all about creating a legacy, basically, between the first 100 years and all they achieved, linking it for the generation who's still alive, like Lady, you know, Hale, for example, and then pushing it to the next 100 years for the new generation to really focus on the problems they really have rather than what they used to have. So it became, you know, when I started, I thought, well, let's just film these stories and let's just educate a little bit about the timeline and how it came to be. And completely, if you like, I hoped it would become like a festival that celebrates women, but you don't know until you start something whether it really galvanizes everybody. And it's just way beyond my imagination. I mean, we did raise about £800,000 to fund and
Wow.
grow all these things. Don't magic themselves; they cost money. As you know, you have a podcast, right? So nothing can be produced with nothing. Although a lot of time can go towards something, but generally speaking, to produce things and leave them and make books, it costs, and it's an effort. But I think we really contributed to a kind of slightly different context around this whole discussion, and a lot of the, celebrations around women, the women's group, the whole award season, it's completely changed. So much more of it is now linked to celebrating women, seeing them.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the case. I mean, 10 years ago when we started, none of that was here. So
I'm actually in awe of hearing that story, because a lot of this I knew in terms of, women didn't really have an identity. I know when they were married, for example, they were their husband's identity was their identity, right? But the monumental effort that it must have taken to get to the position that you are in with this project is huge. It's absolutely massive. Before we go on to the last section of this podcast, which is very exciting for me because I had a ton more questions. Where do you see this project going in the near future? Where do you want it to see? Where do you want it to be? Sorry.
The next 100 years chapter.
Yes.
So we have some really, if you like, kind of established rhythm. So every year we have still our words. This year is the 10th edition. We launched a public lecture series where we only platform a woman. And so I like that to continue, because I think it's about talking about ideas as opposed to how it feels to be a woman in law. I'm more interested in what's in the head of women lawyers and how important and influential they are for the work and their thinking. So for me, we discovered that, hearing the voices of women as experts was still something that was an issue. So creating this lecture series allows us to bring this kind of expertise to the fore. So we basically have a few things that we do every year, but one thing that we want to do more, we haven't done as a charity, but we'd like to do more of it from this year onwards, is to create grant giving, to raise money from a variety of organizations, and then to really embed this legacy around women and research with undergraduate students who still come through and they don't know what they ought to know, which is that women have contributed massively to the legal profession in a very different way and in a short space of time. And so last year we launched in a kind of soft phase this campaign called Paving the Way. And that's to give every year 10 scholars £3,000 to basically carry out their dissertation in the final year of the undergrad on the contribution of women to law and the legal landscape, but not about being a woman, but about how they interacted with law in a variety of ways. And in that way to really reflect back on some of their, the historic figures, but also the work they were doing at the time and how it's changed maybe some of the outcomes that we see. So for example, family law, hugely influenced by women, because women, when they became judges, they were always sent to family courts or criminal courts, even if they were, commercial barristers. It was completely crazy. So if you're a woman, because you were a woman and you needed to know about the home, as you said, because of marriage and whatever, they would be sent to something that they weren't experts in, but they were stereotyped in because they knew about, because they had children, surely they can know about family law. It's a complete absurd thing. But that does mean that, for example, people like Lady Hale or Baroness Butler-Sloss, they had a really important role in the Children's Act, thinking about the children's perspective, how does it work with the family dynamic, because they came with a different lens and actually changed a lot of what we see today because of their intervention into what the law was then and how they evolved it. And I think there's a lot of this kind of contribution that is still unknown. And anyway, so we'd like to connect more with universities for students to continue to be curious, men and women, because the scholars are male and female, that you don't have to be a woman to get the scholarship. To really understand that you can't build on the future if you don't understand the past. It's very simple.
Exactly.
And if you keep doing that, you will build sandcastles.
Mm.
And then you will have frustrations around things that are maybe not obstacles or not on the scale you think.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way to look at the profession in the future. So I mean, we're trying to help them connect with some of the work we did and to carry it forward, to be honest, because otherwise it won't be wasted, because researchers have access to it because it's in the Women's Library at the London School of Economics. So it's, you know, in public record. But for me, what concerns me is that stereotypes outlast us and people create obstacles out of something that isn't real anymore. And they don't focus on the real obstacle that's ahead of them, you know? And so that's basically what we want to contribute more, unlock some of the sticky parts that we've discovered remain.
To that, again, an admirable direction to be in. And I like the idea of finding the lecture series, finding other ways to research into the past. And to be fair, and you are correct, I absolutely categorically advocate for this on every public speaking platform. We have to learn from the past. It feels like everywhere you look now, and I'll be completely frank, not a political conversationist, but everywhere you look now, it looks like everybody's still focused on the present and the future and completely have neglected what's happened in the past, which is never going to help our case. But I don't see how we can learn anything from looking just at the present.
But this is how history repeats itself.
Yes, exactly. This is what I've been saying. This is how history keeps repeating itself. We make the same mistakes as if it's a novel mistake, but it's not a novel mistake. It's already been made 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, etc. So yes,
it tends to be every 50 years.
Does it?
We've looked into it, so the wheel of history just keeps rolling back.
Not surprised. So
the stage is set, the spotlight is on. This is Doses of Authenticity, where the real stories unfold, every answer reveals a new layer, and the true self shines. Let the questioning begin.
What is your number one life philosophy?
Learn from the past to change the future, right?
How do you want to be remembered?
I think probably as a kind person.
One change you would make to society?
Biggest change that we in our current climate have to make, I guess, is to really reinvent diplomacy and also really understand the common ground where we agree rather than disagree.
The best advice you have ever been given?
People problems never get better with time, unlike wine. So you always have to resolve problems with people and not let them fester because they don't improve.
What makes you authentic and unique?
I just tell it as it is.
Great answers. So before we sign off, before we close this conversation off, and to be fair, I sometimes wish I asked these questions at the beginning because some of what you just said would have been amazing content for a podcast, but maybe in another episode. Tell people where they can find you, where they can research your work, your project, your business, and your social medias.
So I'm on LinkedIn primarily. I'm on other platforms, but I'm not very active. You can't keep all the balls in the air.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to just be more focused. So LinkedIn is really my main platform, I guess. If people want to connect, I'm very happy to connect. Obelisksupport.com is the business. And next 100 years with numbers, not letters. Next100years.org.uk is the charity. And really, YouTube also has all of our films, so they're free to watch.
Amazing. Well, I can attest to the fact that Dana is a very lovely person, very, very warm and easy to speak to, which is, as you mentioned, can be quite daunting for some people. Something we didn't touch upon, which I now regretfully say, we didn't touch upon the fact that she just received an OBE as well. So a huge congratulations on that. But everyone will have your links in the bottom of all the descriptions, YouTube, all the social medias, LinkedIn as well. But yes, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and